There once was a time when honor meant something in Rome. In this road, I no longer believe that exists. We must find it. And know this, where death is, we are not. Where we are, death is not.
By my sword. Strength and honor!
And that is a clip from Gladiator 2. I am delighted to say we've been joined by its director, Sir Ridley Scott. Ridley, hello, how are you?
Good, I think. I'm getting croaky with so many interviews. I'm croaking.
Yeah, but that's because people are interested. That's because people want to hear the story.
Well, it's always a good thing, yeah.
They want to hear what you have to say.
Yes, exactly.
Because, again, we come back to a story which you began a couple of decades ago. And there's been kind of like rumours of another Gladiator movie kind of ever since.
No, the film was successful at the time, but then it became more successful in its afterlife. So what we do in life echoes in eternity. So actually it kept echoing around the world, mainly because of the platforms. Because the wonderful thing about all the digital platforms is you can press a button, I can press a button, you get the duelist looking perfect from 45 years ago, right? And so it keeps films alive, which is great. And I kept getting told by generations that were probably 3 when the Gladiator was done, I love your film Gladiator. So where do you see it? On TV last night. So I thought after a while, with Doug and Lucy and Fisher and my fellow producers, I said, we have to have a sequel. And so we sat down in that first conversation, that's got to be almost 10 years after the original film. I haven't got a date on it, but from that we talked about it. We had a writer in who took 10 months to fail. I'm not going to say who he was because he's a friend and he's a good writer. He said, I don't know how to do this thing. So we then let that drop. Meanwhile, I'm not sitting around biting my finger. I'm making 13 movies in this time. So I then go back and said, we left it 2 years. Said, we got to hit the table again. So you sit around a table and you pontificate. You do a what if around the table. Forever you're doing a what if with a writer, and we did a what if with David Scarp, who had a good experience with on Napoleon. And from the what if came out the sequel, and here we are. But so that was almost quite recent, 3 years ago.
Was the story always going to be about Lucius?
Well, not necessarily, but when you think about it, there's 2 survivors. There's the mother, and people might question that, of course. Did she simply get older and that was it? And I think my Lucilla doesn't get old. She definitely walks on water. She looks beautiful still after 25 years. But the boy, what happened to the boy? And that's a question that just hangs in the air till you say, wait a minute, well, where did he go to? And suddenly you're into a conversation about his journey and why did he return to Rome? So it's a bit like, people don't realize, but writing a screenplay, you're essentially writing a book.
And the fact that we start with Lucius means that you have to have a fantastic actor playing the role. Mm. And the last time Paul Mescal was on this show, which was for After Sun, and he said, and this is almost a word-for-word quote, he said, I could quite happily spend my time doing small independent movies. and then the next thing, hello, he's in one of the biggest epic films of all time. How did you end up with Paul?
Well, I need to have a bedtime story, and I try not to watch the news because the present news is bad every which way you look at it. So I tend to skim. And I tend to look at what they call the low budget division. And BFI now has a kind of channel. So I look at that because I like to watch the new incomers rather than the old outgoers, okay? And the new incomers, I saw this thing called Normal People. I thought, that's interesting. Then I saw that, and I binged on the 8 hours, not in one go, but in like 4 goes of 2. I thought, this guy's really interesting. He reminds me of Richard Harris, a little bit of Albert Finney in young years. And this coincided with me almost having the script now working intact, and we're starting to think where we're going to go with it. And I said, "Do you want to do the film?" He said, "Yeah." "Are you kidding?" I think he said, "Are you kidding?"
I don't think I'd noticed before. He has a fantastically Roman profile.
Yeah, that's my job. I go for, the nose is good as well. So I think Richard Harris had a great profile. Finney had a great profile. And Paul has this Roman profile.
You'd be quite
Liam Neeson, Roman
yes.
profile.
You'd be quite a good casting director.
I think I'd be pretty damn good. Yeah, I do quite well.
And do you sort of cast all the time? Are you kind of almost subliminally, you're always looking out?
Yeah, well, I'm usually, when I'm thinking about what I'm doing next or working on it, I'm already thinking about who the 2 or 3 leading players will be. But in any movie, there's dozens of the people have to be cast. So I do rely on very good casting directors as well. I'll pass by them. I say, "What about this? What about that?" I've already thought about them, or I'm stuck here, fill it in. Casting director is really a very important conversation for me.